All right, we are
All
back.
right. So we're on to chapter three, four, and five. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll let you start with it. What hit you? What struck you?
So again, I did read both um,
Oh,
translations.
text.
Yes.
Nice.
And I'm finding I'm liking this one better, which is the
Okay.
one that is more uh, the essence is captured, whereas
Yeah.
this one is more verse by verse translated. I'm finding that I can
Right.
understand this one better,
Yeah.
and it also uses more of the um, original like Sanskrit words, which I think is
Oh, interesting.
helpful because when you see them in context, you kind of get an idea for what they are. So, for
Yeah.
example, I think you had sent me something about the Gunas last week,
Good.
and
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was like, why are you bringing this up? Because I'd read this one
Right.
first, and it replaced the word Gunas with. Let me remind myself what it was. Um,
Wondering what that translation would
it
be.
replaced the word
Oh,
Gunas. I
so
think it was.
the guy in the video was referring to
Yeah.
them as threads at the time.
Yeah, so it
I think that
replaced the
was more
word
of a.
gunas with qualities of nature, or just
Huh.
qualities. And so I'd read this one first, and I was like, I don't know, why are you bringing this up? And I was also kind of like, okay, I don't know. And then I
Right.
read this one, and it used the word gunas, and I was like, oh, like
Oh,
it now
that's why.
means something different, right? Like
Yeah.
it's this new concept as opposed to qualities of nature, which is like, I don't know what a guna
Yeah.
is, but I don't know what a quality of nature is. But giving it a new
Right.
word makes it
Yeah.
feel
Almost
like
like you're getting, it's like it's providing you with helpful technical jargon, the Gunas.
yes, yes,
That fair? Like
as
it's sort of
opposed
a
to like
special.
this more vague thing, qualities of nature.
Yeah.
So, um, when I was reading it, when I finally got to this one, I was like, oh, okay, that's what we're talking about. And then there's three of them, but I think it only specifically talks about was it Rajo Juna, the one which was about anger and um,
Yeah. Oh, in our
yeah,
text?
in our text, yes. Um, but yeah, I mean, okay,
That's
so these what's kind of happening is Arjuna is asking Krishna a couple of questions in each of these chapters. It's mostly Krishna
yeah.
explaining um, these are different disciplines, and or this book uses the word discipline. I think this one uses
Right.
yoga. Um,
Yoga.
and we have the first one's kind of
Yoga of
about,
understanding.
or
Yoga of
wait,
understanding, yoga of action.
yes, and then right, because it's like knowledge. Wait, right? Knowledge is the first one. No,
Yeah,
wait.
I've got
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah.
that would
Actually, the
that would
first
be a
one we
proof.
did was this one. It says it's discipline or karma.
Okay.
Right, that was number three, and then four was renunciation, and then
Oh, right, right, right,
oh
right,
no,
right.
not
Yes.
four. Wait,
So
I'm doing that. That's
my
five
chapter
was renunciation.
three, yoga of action, four, yoga of wisdom, and then five, well, four is
Interesting.
long, yoga of renunciation.
Yeah,
At least
yeah,
those are chapter title in this translation.
yeah. Um, yeah, and I think Arjuna is just trying to, I guess, get more wisdom for making or
Yeah.
like making progress or action in kind of the war situation that's happening. And so that's
Well,
why. What?
yeah, he even starts in chapter three. My translation, Arjuna is speaking. If you think that understanding is superior to action, so
Hmm.
we've got this sort of um, comparison. Krishna, why do you keep on urging me to engage in this savage act, right? Going to war.
Hmm.
Uh, with words that seem inconsistent, your teaching has bewildered my mind. Tell me, what must I do to arrive at the highest good? So it's still
Yeah.
rooted, right? It's still rooted in the overall uh, sort of arc of the book that starts out with this battle and why should I engage in it, right? Which we talked about last time and read about last time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I mean, the beginning of Krishna's response is, well, I've already told you that in this world, aspirants may find enlightenment by two different paths. In the other translation, it uses the word philosophers and men of discipline. I like this one
Oh,
though, which is less boxing people in. For this one, it says,
sure.
"For the contemplative is the path of knowledge, and for the active is the path of selfless action." And
Yeah,
it's interesting to me that, well, okay, we're also kind of talking about the Hindu religion, and
yeah,
it's not always like one to one, I feel like. But here we're talking about two
yeah,
different paths, and when we were
yeah.
reading Houston Smith's text, I think there were
I'm
four, right?
I'm thinking the same thing you are. Yep.
Yeah,
Cool.
it was karma, which was like discipline. Um,
Right.
oh, I don't remember
Or
them all.
also work. I think it was work.
Yeah,
In
work.
other words, it
Yeah.
was ultimately self-realization through work was karma. Bhakti was the one that was worship, which, by the way, um, bhakti sentiments come up through this reading,
Hmm.
especially with the focus on worship.
Yep.
Sort of like he who is me will realize the self. Um,
Yep.
Raja was sorry, Yana was I think more of the intellectual one
Hmm.
in terms of script studies and, text based. And then Raja was like deep meditation.
Yeah. Wait, was the worship was the first one. That's the love
Yeah.
one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yana,
Yeah.
through knowledge, bhakti, worship, karma, work, Raja. I mean, I threw like I think it said it was like the king of at least the Houston Smith text was like the king or it was like the royal way, something like that.
Hmm.
It's like one of the deepest ways of getting there. Not for everybody, but um, and that was
That was like,
essentially through meditation. It was like through deep meditation.
yeah, that was like mastering the senses, which is different
Correct.
than just understanding, which was the kind
Right.
of knowledge one. Yeah.
No, I thought of the same thing when upon reading and rereading that line you just read about
Yeah.
in this world there are two main paths, right?
Yeah.
That which it'll be interesting whether or not. Well, I mean, whether to see where the discussion goes if the other paths are brought up, the other
Yeah.
of the four, the other of the four. But even in, I mean, just to give you an example, next page on mine. Um, it's hard to match these because our pagination and translation is different, but I have a line that says, "The whole world becomes a slave to its own activity, Arjuna. If you want to be truly free, perform all actions as worship." And then he continues, um, by worship, well, I'm skipping a line or two. By worship, you will always be fruitful and your wishes will be fulfilled. By worship, you will nourish the gods and the gods will nourish you in return. And he continues actually onto the next page with the focus on worship, which sounds to me like the bhakti form.
Hmm. Hmm.
But all of these, I think, are overlapping one
Yeah,
another
and I
because
mean, when
the
in
main goal.
the next chapter, right? It's either next or no, in the last chapter we read, because Krishna's kind of talking about, oh, this is the karma yoga, and then oh, this is through renunciation. These are the two paths, right? Or not renunciation, through knowledge. And then it's like, well, wait, which one is better? And it's like, well, no, they're both the same, but different, right?
I
They're both different paths that meet up, and it's like you end up
well,
doing the other one
we
as you get
appreciated in
through
the
it.
Houston Smith book, in sort of like the intro to Hinduism, was
Hmm.
this recognition of different types of people, different having different strengths, needs, etc. Um, isn't it interesting that there are these different paths within the one religion that allows the aspirant to choose, right?
Yeah,
Depending on their particular interests, right? So let's say that you have one that's just more um, worshipful and not very intellectually inclined. Well, then the bhakti yoga is a way for them to reach self-realization,
hmm,
right? Or someone that's more intellectually inclined and not as much work-based or something like that. Like it seems like the karma yoga could be really good for the everyday um, employee and worker, right? Because you're doing that work right? You got to get up and do your 9 to 5.
hmm.
The way in which you do that 9 to 5 can be directed outward, you know.
Yeah, but I
But
think, I mean, I think that's true, but I also think that it's like, um, it's not that simple of like, uh, through like karma or work um,
Yep.
that applies to somebody who's a worker because it's like
Right.
yes that might be the entry point but I think
Right.
ultimately as you do your duty for like realizing Brahman
Yeah.
you kind of have to get to a certain point of um, like realization or like the understanding and the knowledge and the other things come as you progress through your duty because you kind of separate from yourself and it's not
Yeah.
just it doesn't just become the duty it becomes um, kind of stepping back from that and
Yeah.
having
I
the
guess
other
what I'm saying
elements.
is if you don't have, um, it seems like the yoga of karma is conducive to a lot of us because we are working 9 to 5. In other words, you could focus on. Not everyone has the ability to be a monk, is my point, right? If
Hmm.
you're a husband or wife and you're working or something like that, and you have a family. I was just saying that and this is my own spin, that there's something about the karma yoga that lends itself to that lifestyle
Hmm.
because you can't be sitting around and meditating all day long, right? You've got to get up, you've got to provide for the family, etc. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of it, I think what's similar with all four is that essentially you're overcoming the self, right?
Yeah.
You're not attaching yourself to the actions or the result of the actions in some egotistical way, right? It's ultimately pushing. Um, I actually had a little drawing at one point where it was like where he says perform all actions as worship, and I was thinking I was like, so here I am, the actor, my action is coming out from me, but a lot of times our actions are coming back toward us, right? So we're clinging to something in the results of the action,
Hmm.
right? I want to be popular, I want to be famous, I want a certain amount of money or prestige with my work, whatever, fill in the blank. But if it's all done as worship, the interesting thing about worship is that the end result is actually away from you,
Hmm.
right? I'm not necessarily I mean, even though he does say something like worship by worship you nourish the gods and the gods will nourish you, like it comes back. But there's something about worship where it's an action that's pushed out from you and doesn't really return to you.
Hmm.
And what I'm getting, and I'm being vague, but what I'm getting at is the idea that I'm not clinging to the action. It's like an offering, right? It's
Right.
like I'm giving this action away.
Or even
And
clinging
so,
to the duty, I think.
say it again.
Or not, or like also not clinging to the duty,
Yeah,
which is
exactly,
which is weird
exactly.
because it's like that's the goal is fault like be bound to your duty. But then it's like by doing that, you're also released from it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So the bhakti one does that because the focus is turned away from you and your pettiness and your littleness, ultimately to God or the gods, whatever you
Hmm.
want to say, or Brahman. The work could be done that way as well if it's selfless and not clinging to the results of the actions. Even the scripture studies as well. You're not doing it to be smart, right? You're
Hmm.
doing it ultimately for self-realization. So it's also an overcoming of the self. And then clearly with the Raja Yoga, you know, deep meditation over years and years and years, you actually realize that the ego is an impediment, you know, or actually an illusion, you
Hmm.
know, an illusion that we build up over time with our actions,
Right. I thought it
um,
was interesting how kind of right before, well, where is it? How Krishna basically explains his own or its own being, right? Like I am not bound by any sort of duty. There's
mhm.
nothing in all three. I don't know what the three worlds are. I'm guessing like above
I thought about that too.
here and
Yeah.
below, but um, which I do not already possess. So already has everything basically. Nothing I've yet
Mm.
to acquire. but I go on working nevertheless. If I did not continue to work untiringly as I do, mankind would still follow me no matter where I led them. Suppose I were to
Hmm.
stop, they would all be lost. The result would be caste mixture and universal destruction.
Yep.
So that's interesting. That's like Krishna as like a role model kind of, right?
Mhm.
For duty, even though not bound by duty, but doing it to show as an example to humans to kind of bring them onto the path of duty and ultimately enlightenment.
I agree, and I actually I thought too that this was that this might be a response. I jotted this down, but not in that section. It might be it's sorry, it's making a big metaphysical slash moral claim, let's say,
Hmm.
but also um, it gets back to Arjuna and why he should fight. Remember, we were talking about
Yeah.
last time, right? Like we were talking about that one of the
Oh,
possible
yeah.
explanations why he should fight is ultimately that he is going to be an example. Actually, well, the text says it, right?
Hmm.
What will people say about you? You know, generations to come. You could look at that as egotistical, you know, and and petty, but no, from Krishna's perspective, you were standing then as this light, as this model of what you should do. And so it's sort of an interesting sort of like macro and
Yep.
microcosm um, presented by what he says.
Oh, interesting. It's also kind of meta because it's like Krishna, yes, it's like, yes, duty, like I'm doing things, I'm performing actions even though I don't have duty, right?
Right.
Um, and so you should perform actions because I'm like your role model.
Hmm.
But then there's also kind of the meta of like me being a role model to humans is like you being a role model to others
Right.
underneath
It
you.
mirrors.
Yeah.
I thought I jotted it down because I was like reason for this is also answering, you know, Arjuna's like lead question about why I should be fighting, you know.
Yeah.
Um
I really like what
oh,
followed this
here,
too.
here I was going to say on page 65, which is
Uh,
ridiculous. It's still in Oh, I can give you a line. Do you have line numbers?
not in the translation I like better.
Okay, I've got it's 3 roughly 17 through 21. And he says so if you will from the start this chapter one, two, three, 4 pages in, roughly, obviously. But he
How did
says,
is it? Where
whatever.
does it? Where is it in the
Oh,
like
it's right near.
reference?
It's right near the name Janaka or Yanaka.
Oh, okay.
Janaka and other wise kings govern, and
Yes.
thus assure the well-being of the world. It's the next line. It says, "Whatever a great man does, ordinary people will do. Whatever standard he sets, everyone else will follow."
Hmm.
Um, Oh, and it's right before the three world bit.
Yep.
So that I also thought was um, sort of going back to this idea that you are this sort of role model, you're this archetype, and whatever you do is going to end up influencing others,
Hmm.
um, especially a great man. You'll be looking up to that individual with respect and reverence. So careful what you do.
Hmm.
Um, In fact, yeah, at whatever standard he sets, everyone else will follow. Um, so, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it, it's an interplay between the Hindu metaphysics and also the action on the battlefield, as it were.
Yeah. I really liked right after this part where there's like a little. This is a quote, I think. It's
Okay.
indented on mine, but then after the quote, what is it? Hold on, let me just real quick double check what this looks like in the other one. D discipline of action. Um, is that here? Is this the first part? No, okay, so there's the first kind of quote from the Upanishads, I
Mhm.
think. And then there's no, it's hard for me to hard for me to correlate. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So right after the part we were talking about
Sure.
with the three worlds, um,
Hmm.
mine is just a couple paragraphs after. But there's this part where it's about ego. So every action is really performed by the gunas, is what it says. Again,
Yep,
this
I
was
see it.
really
Mhm.
weird for me to read when it was qualities.
Yeah. Is this
Um,
what one where is this the one where it says like the wise man, I mean, roughly the wise man knows that when objects act on the senses, it is merely the gunas acting on the gunas? Is that around where you are?
yes, yep. So
Okay.
man deluded by his egoism thinks I am the doer, or I am the actor in the other one. But who has true insight into the operations of the gunas and their various functions knows that when senses attach themselves to objects, gunas are merely attaching themselves to gunas. Knowing this, he does not become attached to his actions.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's interesting because this is kind of getting to more of a spiritual or metaphysical understanding of reality. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, it's almost materialistic in nature, kind of like
Hmm.
the way I think about it, because it's like it's not the kind of, oh, I think I'm a being performing actions on the world. It's like ultimately, if you break it down, it's just matter performing action on matter,
Right,
right?
right,
Or in this more
right.
spiritual sense, the threads performing action on the threads, or however
Yeah.
you interpret the gunas. But I don't know. It's like it's interesting because this is where it starts to bring a shift from just about duty and just about action, right? And kind
Yeah.
of like the pride that might come from that to,
Hmm.
oh, it's like ultimately just kind of like the unfolding of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Just cause and effect. Um,
Right.
and I think that's kind of how he gets to Krishna not being bound by duty. Because it's like if you ultimately can realize this and live this out, then there is no ego for your actions. Like you were talking about, right? Like it's not about trying to attain something or get a goal. It's just about the action itself.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, no doubt. I think to reference that video,
Yeah,
um, I just put down some notes about the gunas. So you've got rajas, um, right? I think it's a hard J, rajas,
yeah.
as a guna, and that was the guna of action or activity. Um, and then tamas, which is I'm sorry, the guna of inertia, or at least in the video he said because he was looking at them at the physical plane, but he was also looking at them at the spiritual slash personal plane. So inertia, like the example he gave was the rock.
Hmm.
So all tamas is just it's just there. But then at the spiritual level, he was talking about it being ignorance.
Mm,
Um, but I also imagine we have tamas as well if we're like sleeping, let's say, and then we get up in the morning and move around, then we have rajas, right?
sure.
Uh, but it was interesting, and I want to say the top one was sattva, which was a balance of the two.
Hmm.
So you could have, it almost seems like you could have too much activity. You certainly can have too much inertia, and you ultimately want to sort of find that balance. Um, because sattva in my other research was also like um, contentment, illumination, clarity, joy, peace, right? Although it's the guna of balance,
Hmm.
but in terms of the spiritual component or quality was these elements of like joy, peace, when you balance these two. But what's interesting is, so in other words, the gunas, um, he even was comparing them right to the to Newton's three laws,
Yeah.
right? So the gunas have do say something about the natural world, and then they do say something about the spiritual world. But I'm curious to just go back to that line that you started with,
Hmm.
try and tease it out. The wise man knows that when objects act on the senses, it is merely the gunas acting on the gunas. Thus, he is unattached. How do you understand that? The gunas acting on the gunas. So when a man knows that when objects, right,
Hmm.
I get up, I see something, it's acting on my senses, it's merely the gunas acting on the gunas. Actually, you might have a different translation.
Yeah, well, let me also try to find the other one too, because just for comparison. Um,
Okay. I mean, as you're looking for it, my first stab at that is that I there's an object that I see or I sense in some particular way. I'm guessing this object and my senses, to tease it out, are um, a sort of an interplay or interaction of those three gunas, right? Um, and in so and in so seeing them as just gunas interacting on gunas, my yeah my if I'm the wise man in this particular case, he's unattached to it. So it's almost sort of like I guess the one image I have is, let's say, the unenlightened image of whatever, I see an object that I want, and now all these thoughts start coming to the fore about how do I get that thing, even if it's small, like a cup of coffee. Um, and that's sort of like what's at play, and everything's motivated by the object and my sensing it. Pause. I guess the wise person, the enlightened person, will maybe have a outside look a little bit of like, oh, wait a minute, this is how this object is working on my mind right now. I am seeing the flow of thoughts, that are, I guess, natural to my being as a seeing, sensing thing. Like it's almost like you're more aware of what's going on, as opposed to, oh my goodness, that I must have that coffee, or I received some good news. Wow, that really is good news, or that's bad news. Oh, that should be sad. Like there's sort of like this interaction of the sensed thing creates this quote unquote natural response, whereas the wise man's sort of pulling back and saying, wait a minute, there's something going on here. This is sort of how nature plays itself out. I can make a I can make a choice to act on it, or I can not. I don't know. I'm being vague, but
hmm.
I'm trying to tease it out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So this other translation says actions are also, I just wanted to double check. This translation has verse numbers, like, so this is like 27, 28, 29, 30.
Mhm.
So specifically, like, does that line up with yours? Just
Yep,
wondering.
yep. Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, actions are all affected by qualities of nature, but deluded by individuality. The self thinks I am the actor. When he can discriminate the actions in nature's qualities and think the qualities depend on other qualities, he is detached. Those deluded by the qualities of nature are attached to their actions. A man who knows this should not upset these dull men of partial knowledge. Wow.
Right.
Surrender all actions to me and fix your reason on your inner self. Um, and then yeah, fight the battle. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's on the right track. Um, he who can discriminate the actions of nature's qualities, or the who can discriminate the actions of gunas and think the gunas depend on other gunas, essentially, he is
Mhm.
detached. Um, yeah, I mean, again, I think it's like if it's like an interpretation of the world. If you are
Mhm.
looking at the world as objects, like subject, object, verbs, right? Then
Yeah.
you have this kind of cause and effect of performing actions has some result in the world, and those
Mm-hmm.
results can have value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like different. I don't know. It's kind of like
Yeah.
transactional, but
Mm-hmm.
transactional in like this action gets me happiness or money or whatever,
Right.
right? It's like you're attaching object to money or happiness or whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. But if you
Right.
look at it from like, oh, well, what is money? Ultimately, it's just
Right.
qualities of nature. Ultimately,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just gunas. What is a
Yeah.
person? Just gunas. What is an action?
Right.
Just gunas. And so it's
Yeah.
like ultimately what's happening is if you look at it at the core, it's just like these very fundamental things acting upon
Mm-hmm.
very fundamental things. And it's money is this concept that you're adding on top of what is actually there, which is like material or atoms
Right.
or
Right.
this on some
Right.
sort of spiritual like fundamental
Yeah.
aspect, right? And so if you look at it, like you boil it down, and that's all anything is, then it's like, yeah, there's kind of cause and effect. Gunas act on gunas, but what does that matter? Like those don't have any value. You are adding the value to the
Yeah.
combination of
Yeah.
those things or attaching to those things. So it's like by kind of looking at it at the decomposed state, like atomically almost, right? You
Mm-hmm.
are therefore becoming detached from the objects because the objects are no longer objects,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The objects were are things in your mind or or how you're interpreting the gunas, but
Mm-hmm.
like as a collection, as a whole, like
Yeah.
you are a human,
Yeah.
I'm a human. That's me
Right.
interpreting you as a collection of
Mm-hmm.
gunas. But if I just look at it as like, oh, we're just matter, we're just gunas,
Mm-hmm.
and we're having this it's like it's very monistic, right? It's like if you look at the senses, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I am not a person, or I'm not a person who's seeing a screen with my father on it, right?
Sure.
It's like the the sense is entirely connected, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like we are
Mm-hmm.
separate.
Sure.
You are there and I am here and
Right.
I am perceiving you. It's like perception is happening and we are on both like we are just like it's just one thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then and and so yeah, it's like it's just looking at it from a different layer, I guess,
Yeah.
instead of the
Yeah. I
collection
was
of things.
thinking like if you could take as an analogy, I mean, you could take any maybe, but the one because the in that little video I shared with you, he was using Newton's laws. If you could look at that, right, into the laws of motion as being an analogy, you know, like uh, what type of attach, like how, you know, how could I, when I think about the laws of the laws of motion, how can we incorporate this notion sort of attachment as it relates to sense objects, right? And I guess what I'm sort of doing is I'm saying like the laws of motion, the three laws of motion are they're just, if you will, some brute facts of nature, right? And I think this is paralleling a little bit what you're saying about um, bringing, we're imposing something onto it,
Hmm.
right? Right. The unenlightened individual is imposing something onto it that really maybe shouldn't be imposed onto it. This is how nature works, and this is how nature works with with objects either in motion or stasis. um, if I attach myself to that, which again would be weird, right? How do I attach myself to the three laws of motion? But if I attach myself to just basically how nature works, um, then it seems like there's some type of flaw or fault in so doing that, right? um, that it almost seems like there's an element of like pulling back, sort of allowing nature to function in the way that it does without you bringing on some other, attachment or connection or personal meaning that can ultimately trip you up in terms of your quest to self-realization. You know, um, I'm just trying to think of like because it's funny because it's saying that about the gunas when it was first introduced. Um, how yeah, no one can no one, not even for an instant, can exist without acting. All beings are compelled, however unwilling, by the three strands of nature called gunas. But he who controls his actions but lets his mind dwell on sense objects is deluding himself and spoiling his search for the deepest truth. Um, the superior man is he whose mind can control his senses with no attachment to results. He engages in the yoga of action. So there's something here, um, like the gunas are part of nature. They are we the gunas are part of we are part of nature. Therefore, they're in us, with us, around us, structure us, and um, I want to say is sort of there's like a brute fact of how they function in nature, and yet at the same point, your orientation to them can help or hurt you on your quest to see things as they really are.
Hmm.
I almost feel like we need to do some Guna study, as it were. You know.
Sure. Yeah, in that part where it was a man who renounces certain physical actions, but still lets his mind dwell on the objects of his central desire, is deceiving himself. He can only be called a hypocrite. I think you said something, delusion or something.
Mm,
But, um, right, like that's kind of talking about, um, like the gunas are not just, or even if the guna, um, even if you're renouncing physical action,
mm,
right, which might give you material gain or something,
right.
you can still be, so in which case you would be attached to the physical outcome of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you renounce that, you can still be attached mentally to
Mm,
the concept of something, right?
yeah.
Like to a loved one, or the concept of money, or the concept of being alive, or anything like that, right? And so being attached at that level is still like you're attached, like the concept is higher. Like I'm almost thinking about this as like I don't know, I want to say like platonic solids, but not, or
Mm,
not solids, but like the platonic ideals, or
idea.
yeah,
Form.
forms, yeah, the platonic forms where it's like you're becoming attached to an instance of something that's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of bigger,
I,
right? And so
yeah.
it's like this mental attachment of uh I mean almost like the word like I think it uses the word desire too, right? Like if you
Yeah.
it's almost like if you desire something, then you're not
Mm,
detached from that thing,
correct.
right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Mm,
so you can't separate yourself from whatever it is you desire or whatever it is you're attached to.
I
Um,
wonder if we could look at Gunas as just almost just being another, not fully, but in terms of understanding that line of because it does connect it connects it to the senses and objects, right? So the senses and objects are like they're included with this statement on the Gunas. If another way of seeing this is sort of like um, this is how objects are. So setting guna aside for a second, this is essentially how when objects act on my senses, this is essentially how sort of objects act on objects.
hmm
um, and I guess I'm saying object as in the sensed object, and then let's say sight or sound, right?
hmm
I know sight and sound's not an object, but sort of this is how these play out. Um, uh, this is how these play out on each other, and then the next step is um, given how given how let's just say like this is a natural function of how objects play on objects, then the next question comes to what's going to be your orientation to it. So are you going to be attached to this in some way or unattached,
Hmm.
right? So it's sort of like, you know, the nature is playing this thing out, um, and I could be a busybody and moved constantly by my sense, almost like our puppy, you know, just like it doesn't matter what sound, or smell pops up. Charlie's redirected,
Hmm.
constantly redirected, right? In a puppy-like fashion because of that high energy, etc. Um, Whereas the wise man is going to, it's almost like sitting and watching it play out. Um, I don't need to, as you know, I don't. I think I think I shared this before, and it just popped in my mind. But one of the first books I read on Zen, like 2005, 2006, was called. You know what? I don't even know what it was called, but I want to say it was something like Zen. Oh, Everyday Zen, Everyday Zen, and they gave an analogy about sitting and meditating, and looking at your thoughts like you're looking at traffic.
Hmm.
And if you were just looking at traffic, you have all these cars that are just passing. Um, try to look at it. Try to look at your passing thoughts when you're sitting in meditation as cars passing on a road. You're not attaching yourself to any one of them, unless I guess you're a car enthusiast. But you're not, right. You're just letting them flow, and you're
Hmm.
just watching. And what we normally do with our thoughts is that um, thoughts will pop up, and that will prompt action, right? I
Yeah.
need, what I have a stress, and then my body reacts to it. I might be like, I can't sleep right now. I need to get up and do something, or, the alarm goes off for me anyway, and I need to make, I immediately go and think to make coffee. Those kind of things. Whereas, you with the analogy, you don't. I'm sorry, with the traffic moving past, the author of that book was saying just literally just look at your thoughts pass.
Right.
You don't have to cling to any one of them. You're choosing to cling to them.
Yeah.
And that's what makes meditation for the beginner really difficult, because you're sitting there and then you have this thought about like, why am I sitting here? Or I need to do this, I need to do X. That's sort of my analogy.
Yeah.
Like the wise man is sort of like, this is how nature is unfolding. This is how sense objects work on my senses. Um, I can I at some point need to discipline myself to the point where I can choose to act, let's say based on wisdom and prudence, on a particular, let's say, thought or sensation. Whereas most of us, the unenlightened, it's like, we're almost slaves to the senses, in the sense of,
Hmm.
a thought comes in, a something is seen, and that triggers us to move.
Right.
You know, almost um, almost in a deterministic way, you know,
Hmm.
not in a free way where I can say, wait a minute, why am I doing this right now? I just saw something, I just heard something, I just smelled something. That doesn't mean I need to act, you know.
Yeah.
That's my best sort of take without, you know.
I feel like, yeah, I think that's right. I think there's kind of a couple levels to it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm going to use an example from another book that we read. But if you think about attaching yourself, right, in kind of like that most immediate phase that you're kind of talking about, like
Mhm.
things come into your mind or your senses, and then you act on those, right? You might think of somebody who's like rushed with adrenaline, and it's like they just want to act from whatever sensations they're experiencing. And so you might
Right.
have, if I don't know, like you might have, let's just say we're in an arena, in like a gladiator arena, and there's somebody down
Yeah.
there fighting.
Yeah.
They're just, they want to fight. They're in the moment, right? Like they're just responding off of everything that's happening around them, right?
Hmm.
And then you might have somebody in the audience who's not taking any actions, who's just
Right.
observing the battle or whatever's happening, but they are attached to the concepts.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They are like they have thoughts about what is happening in front of them and
Hmm.
ideas of like attachment maybe to the outcome of like
Yeah.
who's going to win or what's going to
Right.
happen or the impact
Totally.
or how are people around me reacting. And so
Hmm.
you that's almost like the spectacle, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and that's still an attachment, but it's a mental attachment, not an
I mean,
action attachment.
right.
And
Right.
so it's like then you can go one level higher, which is like the more observing your thoughts, but not just observing your thoughts,
Mhm.
like observing your thoughts without attachment to your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's going beyond that. It's like um, I don't know. I almost want to say going like to the highest level, you're not even perceiving thoughts as thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Or you're not even
Yeah.
perceiving objects as objects. You're breaking them down entirely, trying to break them down, or I don't even know if you're trying. You're just trying to take
Yeah.
everything in as it is,
Yeah.
as material, as gunas, as
Yeah.
qualities. And it's just like
Yeah.
there is, I'm just perceiving disturbance in my mind, or
Yeah. Yeah.
stillness, right? Or this
Yeah.
combination of disturbance and stillness in my
Yeah.
mind or in the world around me. And like that is just how it is, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
thinking about, oh, this disturbance is like an annoying thought and turning it
Yeah.
into an object that I'm now focusing
Yeah.
on. Or not perceiving this calm atmosphere around me as a calm atmosphere around me, which I reside in, but just
Yeah.
experiencing it as kind of
Well,
calmness,
is.
right? As
Yeah.
like a mixture of calmness and small perturbations, right? And so it's like that's like the ultimate level, I feel like. And so you kind
Yeah.
of go from attachment to physical objects, it like receiving input, acting on that input, to thoughts and attaching yourself to thoughts of things, even if you're not acting,
Totally.
to kind of detaching yourself from those thoughts and perceiving those still as thoughts, like, oh, I had a thought that came by. Like, I feel like that's one level higher. But then, like, even higher than that is just no thoughts,
I
just
would imagine
perturbance.
it's pure um it's pure presence.
Hmm.
That the higher one you're talking about. You're
Yeah.
absolutely just present. And and I think that's where an element, I mean, you're in this state of, in so being like fully present, I think there certainly is an element of ego loss,
Hmm.
right? And it was funny as you were talking about the gladiator in the ring and then the spectator,
Hmm.
is that um there is still ego attachment to something.
Yeah.
And we don't even need to describe it negatively.
Hmm.
It's just there is,
Yeah.
right? There's for the gladiator, it's all sensed. It's doubtful that the gladiator's thinking, right?
Yeah.
Right, because it's and then for the spectator, it's thoughts, about what they're seeing.
Yeah.
So there's still that little bit of it. There's still that attachment there that creates that ego. And then I feel like the higher you go, you're literally just present with being,
Hmm.
and being the full gamut, the full spectrum of what we're describing in the analogy anyway.
Yeah.
And there, you know, I would even question if there would even be a thought of I am thinking right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think it would just be there are gunas, there are
Yeah,
perturbations and
yeah,
stillness, and that is
yeah,
it. And I'm just
yeah.
yeah, it just is.
Experiencing it in their fullness.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We do get, this is my lines 36 to 39, and this is Arjuna speaking. That will help you out to
Yeah.
locate it. What is it that drives a man to an evil action, Krishna, even against his will, as if some force made him do it? And Krishna says that force is desire. It is anger arising from the guna called rajas,
Hmm.
deadly, all devouring. That is the enemy here. Now, I want to just make this clear. It arises from rajas. It doesn't mean that rajas is desire and anger, right? It arises from activity
Hmm.
or the active guna. As fire is obscured by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, as a fetus is wrapped in its membrane, so wisdom is obscured by desire. So you've like in that particular one, we're given like a sense of uh, well, we get a rod. Well, I'm sorry, we get a guna explained, right?
Yeah.
Uh, in a particular one. So uh, so yeah, in that one, then we've it's sort of interesting because rajas is the guna of activity and action. However, um, it you know what? It almost seems like it's sorry, desire and anger would be disordered action. With me? So in other words,
Right.
like it's so let's put it this way: rajas. I think all of these gunas are neutral,
Yeah.
like the laws of motion. They're all neutral. There's not a moral component. It's fundamentally what you do or you allow it to do inside the individual,
Or
right?
them being out
So
of balance, right? So if you are
yeah,
entirely filled with rajas,
yeah.
yeah,
Rajas, the
the
guna of
guna,
activity,
and this one says rajo guna. I don't know if that's just another way of when you combine the words. Um,
right?
if you're completely, if that is like the predominant guna
Yeah,
in your psyche or being or where whatever,
yeah,
then that is out of balance. And so
yeah,
you're going to experience this text uses rage and lust
yeah.
instead of desire and
Hmm.
anger. Um, you're going to be prone to those things because you're out of balance. But if you have,
Yeah.
I don't remember the other names of the other ones, but if you have the
I think
other gunas, then
tamas is inertia,
mhm,
so inaction, and then sattva is the balance.
okay,
It's a
yeah,
balancing good. Essentially, I feel like sattva is it's I think it's the video explained it was like threads running, right? Threads running through cloth. And
hmm
so I would imagine that if the Rajas, I was thinking, for instance, of the story of, uh, I guess it was Mary Magdalene, right? Mary Magdalene, she was like Jesus, sorry, Mary, Jesus's mother, is listening to Jesus teach. Mary
hmm
Magdalene, scene, is a busybody. Mary Magdalene seems like a lot of Rajas, all activity when there was this moment for where she could be listening to a sage,
hmm
right? Mary is sort of showing a little bit more of let's say a balance, right, between tamas and rajas, right? Because it's still active. You can be an active listener, right?
hmm
So an active listener that's focusing, whereas Mary Magdalene is just a busybody.
yeah,
She's all Raj and not a balance of the tamas. Um, so it seemed it's almost like the it's almost as if these threads, as it were running through all of nature.
hmm
We as we're not we're not foam on water that's just being pushed around, right? That would be entirely deterministic. So we're within the system. So there's something about us um, that can build from the gunas, right?
hmm
So it's not just matter in motion, and we are that matter, and we have no freedom with it. I think it's how we orient ourselves to right because he talks about that like Rajas as activity. It's just neutral, but careful, imbalanced or disordered, however you want to talk about it, can
hmm
lead to lust or anger or desire.
right,
So it's almost like yeah, it's how are you playing it? How
hmm
are you playing with how are like what kind of what I don't know what kind of song are you playing with if you will with the strings of nature?
hmm
Is it dissonant? Um, is it melodious? Something along those lines in terms of an analogy, right? Because
right,
if desire arises from rajas, but we already said that rajas is neutral, right? That means we have a role in what we do with that guna.
right. If it's not in balance, if it's not
Yeah,
Sattva, if sattva is not
right.
balancing
Sattva.
it with tamas.
In fact, in the video, the the teacher was saying that you're really sort of moving from tamas inertia up through rajas and ultimately sattva
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
spiritually, you know.
Stillness
Uh,
to emotion to balance,
yeah,
kind of.
to balance all, and that's why those other attributes were added in terms of contentment, peace, bliss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tricky one to sort of figure out because it covers all pieces, right? It's a part of nature, and yet it's and so and so being part of nature, and we are part of nature. It's part of us, and yet
Yeah.
we we have some role, we have a role to play with it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um,
Yeah, I wonder
uh,
how, stepping kind of a little bit sideways, but I wonder how this concept of gunas plays with the kind of Ayurvedic concept of doshas. Um, because there are three of them, and they all, like, they're like
Remind
the,
me,
yeah, so
I'm
the doshas are
seeing.
like the constitutions or elements that make up a person.
Hmm.
And you're like
Hmm.
in you have a balance of them, and there
Okay.
are so there's, oh, hold on, there's kapha, which is like earth meets water.
Hmm.
That's like the
Hmm.
element,
Hmm.
which is very inert
Right.
object, so like slower to get started, but once it's going, it's going. So like you can think
Hmm.
of that as people who um, might be slow to learn, but once they
Right.
learn, then
Drummers.
they're on their path, right?
Hmm.
It can also be like, I don't know, it's a more medical side of the Hindu tradition and things, and so
Sure.
it's like you can also describe those people as like bigger boned or stronger or things like that, right? And then you have pitta, which is fire meets water, which is
Hmm.
very like energetic, um, like constantly in motion, like quick to
Hmm.
start and burns long on things. And our American society is very tuned to the pitta for the 9 to 5 work and like get things
Sure.
done, right? And then you have the vata, which is interesting because it doesn't have anything to do with water, fire, or earth.
Hmm.
It's actually like space meets void, and so the people who have the vata constitution are very much like the wind. They're constantly
Hmm.
like shifting around, going about, I don't know, their desires and things change with the wind, kind of a thing. So they may be like trying a lot of different things or not living in one place for a long time. Those people tend to be thinner, like I don't, it's from the kind of medical perspective. So it's like
Hmm. Yeah.
it's interesting that the Hindu traditions, like religion and medical, kind of like they like these three categories. And I wonder
Yeah.
how the gunas tie into that, because there is like
I,
the kapha, which is more inert, and the vata, which is more about,
yeah.
right? Like what that constitution of the gunas looks like in those people. I wonder if they have kind of like a concept of that. But I
I
think that's kind of interesting.
talked about before on Hinduism is one of the things I appreciate about the um, uh, sort of Hindu outlook is it's comprehensive. Like it's really looking at in a different way than let's say I'm used to within the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition,
Hmm.
right? There, it's like even when like so we've got the gunas, we've got the doshas, and then we've got the um, chakras, right?
Hmm.
There's an
Hmm.
element with looking at everything, you know,
Yeah.
um, like no part of the body, as it were, or nature doesn't have a spiritual religious explanation.
Hmm.
I'm not saying their ergo it's true.
Right.
It's just it seems I'm drawn to a system. I think we talked about this before. I'm drawn to a system that is uh, that covers as much of reality as possible.
Hmm.
You know, um, and because it's sort of, I don't know, I think we were talking at one point about, like, you know why if the whole of the, to use the Christian language, if the whole of salvation history is just happening on Earth, why the heck is there the rest of the universe? Like,
Hmm.
how does that play into the story? Like, why is it there? Why not just have a solar system and us on this, or even just a sun and an earth, and
Hmm.
let the salvation story play out there? What's the point of deep space
Hmm.
at all? Those pieces, or um, the in my opinion, the just uh, inadequate response to non-human animals within the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition
Hmm.
is, I mean, like, no, there's no way. They're just mortal beings. That's it.
Hmm.
They're just here for some time, for a bit of pleasure, for us to either have as pets or food. That's it.
Right.
And there's something interesting that it could be the case that little Charlie is on her way um, to, and certainly in this household, spiritual enlightenment, joking, but like, there's something intriguing about that. That part of the answer to the Hindu answer to that, or the Buddhist answer, the reincarnation answer, um, is more satisfying than, oh, it's just this creature that's got a finite existence, and then that's it. It's like, no, she's got her own thoughts and her own goals and whatever, in doggy psychology,
Hmm.
puppy psychology. You know, there's
Yeah.
and back to this point, the comprehensiveness of the whole system. Again, there's it appeals to me because it covers more territory of reality than some of the other religions.
Yeah.
You know,
It's more comprehensive, more
I know we've been
universal
going on
almost.
for a while, but I did want to point this out. In four, um, it was really interesting. This is 4-7, or 4:3-6/7-11. This is Krishna talking. It's right after Arjuna asks yet another question.
Hmm.
But he says, although I am unborn, deathless, the infinite Lord of all beings, through my own wondrous power I come into finite form.
Hmm.
That's the next one too. Whenever righteousness falters and chaos threatens to prevail, I take on a human body and manifest myself on earth. And I couldn't help but think about Jesus.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, those lines, I come into finite form, I take on a human body and manifest myself on earth. And it made me think um, of, as we go through our tour of the world religions, and also question what we've grown up with, so on and so forth, um, is whether or not to see Jesus as an incarnation of Krishna.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In other words, I'm coming in here to help solve a problem, as it were, and that the just playing it out, that if Jesus is an incarnation of Krishna, or whatever you could say, of an incarnation of Brahman,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That there was some need at that particular time for Krishna to come and give a message of, you know, to do a course correction,
Yeah.
right? And but of course, all shrouded with the language of the time,
Hmm.
right? So it's all like very first century um, language, culture, etc., that
Right.
comes
Appealing
through.
to the people of the time
Mhm, mhm.
of
And
the
it was interesting
Constitution. Yeah.
to think. I couldn't help but think about that. I
Yeah.
take on finite form. I take on a human body. I just it was like incarnation right there.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
so
interesting. I think all three translations talk about this a little bit differently. Um, Sorry, was that 7, 8, and 9, or?
this was for I'm sorry. Uh, it's well, so it's right after Arjuna asks his question. Mine
Oh,
are
here,
broken
yeah,
down in paragraphs, so it's the second paragraph.
yeah, okay.
Uh,
Though
Krishna's
myself
second.
unborn, undying, the Lord of creatures, I fashion nature, which is mine, and I come into being through my own magic. Is this one?
Hmm,
Um, Whenever sacred duty decays and chaos prevails, then I create myself, Arjuna, to protect men of virtue and destroy men who do evil. I set the standard of sacred duty. I appear in age after age. He who
hmm.
really knows my divine birth and my action escapes rebirth when he abandons the body and he comes to me, Arjuna. So that's interesting. Um, a little less focused on the kind of reincarnation, but saying I appear in age after age and
Yeah.
I create myself, right, to protect men of virtue. The other the other translation, which is a bit shorter, but um, well, I am the birthless and the deathless, Lord of all that breathes. I seem to be born. It is only seeming, only my Maya. I am
Hmm.
still master of my Prakriti, the power that makes me. When goodness grows weak, when evil increases, I make myself a body.
Wow.
Um, in every age I come back in every I like this though, right? In every age I come back to deliver the holy, to destroy the sin of the sinner, to abolish righteousness. And then he
Well,
who knows, yeah,
if you take if you take um if you look at all the different world religions, you're going to have, if you will, you're going to have people that you revere. You're going to have teachers, you're going to have sages, you're
yeah,
going to have saints, you're going to have people that were on with the message. And you know what? Even if they were off on parts, there was is this call to, if you will, um, for one of a better expression, holiness,
hmm
right? I mean, you find it with all the prophets of the Old Testament. You find it with Jesus. You find it with, Catholic saints, so on and so forth. And once we get to Judaism and Islam, I'm sure there'll be the counterparts,
hmm
and that, and then more recently, your Gandhis of the world, and whoever they might be in the contemporary scene.
yeah,
So it's interesting, um, to almost look at it that way. Of there is Brahman, there is God, and it's not as if, this would go back to this whole question of inclusivity, exclusivity, which we'll address. Well, we'll address throughout the course of these discussions. But it's almost like women, um, Brahman's like sort of poking through in an
yeah,
individual, you know, and it has something to say for that particular generation, and then pokes out, and then another one's poking in. It's
yeah.
an interesting.
I would even go further to say that, um, I mean, I think that the Bhagavad Gita is a little bit personifying here, maybe, or
Yeah.
turning into a story. But I would go further
Sure.
to say that, I mean, if Brahman truly is
Hmm.
the ground of all being, right, and Brahman is Atman, then individuals throughout the entire world, throughout the entire history, right, are building their egos on top of Brahman, right? And so it's like you're going to have different levels of exposure, right, through a
Hmm.
person to
Hmm.
Brahman, to the ground of all being. And some people that exposure is going to be more obvious, like
Yep.
Gandhi, like Jesus, like
Yeah.
other sages, right?
Yep.
And it's not that I I don't I don't know. It's not that Brahman or Krishna needs to be reincarnated in individuals, but
Sure.
that the elements of this being, of the ground of all being, are evident in individuals and even individuals at the same time,
You're right.
right?
So yeah. In other words, it's almost like you could look at, so for all humans that have existed, or maybe there are more enlightened puppies than others as well. But let's just bracket it to humans right now. For all the humans that have existed, we are all expressions of Brahman.
hmm
However, um, due to the nature of certain individuals, they're almost like a clear window to Brahman.
They're like the mirror that has less
And
dirt.
most of us are, you know, the dirty, dusty window that needs a lot of cleaning.
Hmm.
You know, and that's an interesting way. You know, it's a very interesting way of looking at it.
Hmm.
You know, and then it raises the whole question of like, this versus this religion versus this religion is only one true, so on and so forth. It just deflates it
Yeah.
as, any type of difference that you see could be really the result. Because, C.S. Lewis wrote a book. Imagine that. He wrote a book that I think it's called The Abolition of Man, and in it he refers to the common core of all, um, of the morality of all world religions. He calls it the Tao. It's just a term
Hmm.
that he's using. Of course, it'll become important with Taoism. And then it's all it's the general message is the same. You know, the general message is the same, which is, well, love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself. Get over yourself. Um, you know, Essentially, get over yourself is probably the big one, because when we're stuck on self, that's when all the sins or defects arise,
Hmm.
right? So then you have this core message that ultimately helps with self-realization, and the and that's why I like looking at the various religions then as being, wherever there's a difference, then is that really a difference of time, historical time and culture, right?
Hmm.
The culture of that time, right? And so when we start to see the differences, I mean, it might not just be that; it could be the metaphysics are different too, right? Like the notion of God as a trinity versus the Islamic God. There's no trinity. They think
Sure.
that's heretical, and God is literally just one.
Hmm.
But but it could be that a lot of other things are the result of, cultural understandings at that time, and
Yeah.
that's going to happen. If we were having this conversation 200 years ago, we'd be using different language, you know,
Yeah.
different terms, and so on and so forth. That's fine. That's how sort of individuals in history work. So could you look at the differences within the religions, and let's even maybe say, given what we're talking about, of minor importance as being cultural residue
Hmm.
due to their place in history, but
Yeah.
the overall
Yeah.
message is uh, um, is coherent, is the same.
Right.
It's interesting, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
shall we?
Yeah. I think it's a good stopping point.
All right. Are we going to close with our closing, which I think we skipped last time?
Yeah.
Is it shanties? Is it three shanties?
Three shanties.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh,
Om
Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti. Namaste.